next week. It says in Shir Hashirim, I am to my beloved, and my beloved is to me the one that goes out to pasture amongst the roses. It's brought down the Sfarim. It's also brought down the Maamar of our Rebbeim, our Nesiim. The words Anila Doidi V'Doidi Li is an acronym for the name of this month, the month of El. How come? Why? What's the connection? Because since in this particular manner, in this particular order, Tchila, initially, Anila Doidi, first it's I am to my beloved, and afterwards it's my beloved to me. He klolas avoida b'chodesh El is the general avoida in the month of El, because it's actually, there's a different pasuk in Shir Hashirim. It says Doidi li v'ani loi, which is the opposite order. My beloved is to me, Hashem is to me, and I am to him. So it's explained that that's the avodah of the month of Nisan, when Hashem came and took us out of Mitzrayim. So it's Doidi li, he came and took us out. Whereas now in the month of El, it's specifically in this order that we begin our avodah, and this is not just that we begin our avodah and the Eibishter continues in response to our avodah. It's not just in the month of El, v'nimshak gam ba'asori yom shel achrizeh. It also continues in the 10 days after the month of El, meaning all the way through Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. For this reason, when one looks at the end of the words of Anilu Doidi V'Doidi Li, Hem Arba Yudin, there are 4 letters Yud. Ani has a Yud, Doidi, V'Doidi, and Li, all of them have a Yud. And the Yud is the gematria for 10. 4 times 10, that's 40. That it hints at the 40 days that begin with the first day of El until Yom Kippur. We have 40 days. V'yisedim is even more so. I'm sorry. She'oz haya in solachti kidvarecha. On Yom Kippur was what Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu, that I forgave as you said. In other words, Moshe Rabbeinu was pleading Hashem to forgive the Yidden for the sin of the golden calf. So Hashem said, okay, on Yom Kippur he finally said the total forgiveness was accomplished as you asked. Even more so, the forgiveness was in a way of joy and with will. That's the general idea, that the last 40 days that Moshe Rabbeinu was on Har Sinai was with will, with Hashem's desire, that Hashem enjoyed it. Meaning, it's explained that Moshe Rabbeinu was 3 times 40 days on Har Sinai. The initial 40 days from when he went up after Matan Torah to receive the luchos, he came down, he saw the egel, he broke the luchos, he went up a second period of 40 days to plead that Hashem doesn't destroy the Eden. That was one stage, but the ultimate forgiveness, that began when Moshe Rabbeinu went up on Rish Chodesh El, a final 40 days, and on Yom Kippur was the culmination of that, where the complete forgiveness was with Hashem's full will. That the Chazal compare the last 40 days to the first 40 days. The middle 40 days were so-so. The last 40 days was the same love and will of Hashem towards us, like he had the first 40 days when we hadn't done anything wrong. So he says, the ultimate completion and perfection of Hashem's wanting us and forgiving us was on Yom Kippur, like explained in many places. So therefore we see that Anila Doidi Rosh Tevis El is not just limited to the month of El, but it's going on the number 40. The number 40 includes the month of El and the 10 days following it, when there was the culmination of these 40 days. Ultimately, on Yom Kippur, when was the forgiveness in the most, the best way possible. Ois Beis, line 15. The idea behind this is the The month of Elul is a month of accounting, taking stock of the previous year. V'gam, additionally, it's Chodesh Hachana al Shana Haba. It's also a month of preparation for the following, the coming year. Ubezeh gufa, this itself, Hinei HaCheshbon al Shana She'avra v'Hachana al Shana Haba, concerning the taking stock of the previous year and preparing for the future, for the coming year, she'yicholam liyos b'kamei fanim. They could be in many ways. People get sad, people get upset, people get frightened, etc., etc. So the Rebbe says the way it is done is none of the ones that we just now mentioned, but heim ba'ofen shel rachmim. This taking stock of the previous year and the preparing for the coming year is in the way of compassion and mercy. Because the month of El is also known as the month of mercy and compassion. And therefore, since the month of El is known as that month, so all the stock taking and all preparation that we do in that month is infused with the idea of mercy. Moving for this understood, Shekol Inyan Ha'avoda, all the matters of a person's service, V'chol Protei Ha'amshocha, V'ashpa, Shenas Ma'idei Avoda, and all the specifics of that which comes down, and the influence and the flow from above that are occurring as a result of our avodah, it's in a way of compassion and mercy. So both the way we are supposed to act is not in a way of upset and depression and fright, but we're supposed to act in a way that indicates that we are aware of Hashem's mercy. And also, the result of our service is also Hashem giving us in a merciful way. And not just ordinary mercy, but v'rachamim gedolim b'yoser, but to such a degree that it's very great mercy is what comes down as a result of the month of El being a month of mercy. Ad l'shloishes midas harachim, to the 13 attributes of mercy. This is a classic thing that the Alter Rebbe brings down from the Arizal, that when it comes the month of Elul, the 13 attributes of mercy, which are completely above and beyond limitations, as we're going to speak about, is something that shines and illuminates during the month of El. And we know the uniqueness of the 13 attributes of mercy is she'enon choizros reikon. They are not refused by Hashem. That when Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu about using the 13 attributes of mercy as a means of davening, he told him that when Yidden will daven with the 13 attributes of mercy, Hashem, Kelach V'cham, Erech HaPayim, all of those, so then these are requests that are not refused. Why are they not refused? How come there could be certain tefillos, certain types of requests that can be refused, and the 13 attributes of mercy are not refused? Because because the 13 attributes of mercy is beyond any measure and boundary, beyond the chain order of descent, meaning it's beyond any limitation, not only of the physical world, but even the spiritual worlds. And now this idea of the 13 attributes of mercy, we know is the reason why the Alter Rebbe brings the mashal of Melech Basada. The Alter Rebbe, before bringing the famous metaphor of the king being in the field, is out to explain how are the days of Elul, weekdays of such a great revelation of the 13 attributes of mercy shine. So this unlimited aspect of the 13 attributes of mercy is also expressed in the metaphor that Alter Rebbe brings. Line 6, like the Alter Rebbe explains this idea of the 13 attributes of mercy by using the metaphor of a king that's found in the field. That then when the king is in the field, anyone is permitted and is able to approach him as long as they want, and they could greet him, which is not possible when the king is in his royal palace. I mean, we don't even have to, imagine a king. I mean, even let's say, the president. You can't walk into the White House and you can't even get an appointment to go into the White House if you have nothing important to speak with the president. But if the president is traveling and he has a motorcade and he's glad-handing and he's busy shaking people's hands, anybody that can work their way up to the president can greet him, can say hello to him. And the king in the field receives everyone with a beautiful face and shows a laughing countenance to everybody. Meaning, when you use the term panim, which literally means panim yafis, and panim sarkis means a beautiful face and a laughing face, but panim is also from the word pnimius, the inner thing. Meaning, in line 10, the Rebbe says, the face and also the inner aspect of the king, it's in such a way that he receives and shows to whoever wants, even those that, at least for now, they're in the field. Later on, the Alter Rebbe concludes the mashal that when the king returns to the city, they follow him in there. But in the meantime, these are people of the field, meaning seemingly not like the closest people to the king, but the king shows his pnimius, his innermost aspect, even to them. So this shows on how Hashem's compassion and mercy is completely unfettered and unlimited and without any type of boundary and beyond the whole idea of Seder Ishtalshlus. So the Rebbe connects this also with a different vart about the month of El in general, and specifically the time of Slichus, the Baal Shem Tov said this about. So he says in line 13, V'zeh gam toichen Rabbeinu Hazak M'Shem Baal Shem Tov. This is also the content of the teaching of the Alter Rebbe in the name of the Baal Shem Tov. That in the month of Elul, we make an accounting for the entire previous year. What's the idea the Baal Shem Tov explains about taking stock of the entire previous year? So the mashal that the Baal Shem Tov uses, the metaphor the Baal Shem Tov uses, is how the businesses used to take place in the Shtetlach, in the old country. It's still, a business model that's followed in some environments, that people will buy some things wholesale, but they don't have any cash yet, and as they sell the items in their small retail shops, they're able to little by little pay back whatever they took on credit from the wholesaler. In the same way, there is like a business deal between us and Hashem. Hashem gives us what we need, and we are supposed to pay back throughout the year with Torah and mitzvahs. So the Rebbe says, in the name of the Baal Shem Tov, in line 15, why isn't the month of El a time of taking stock and an accounting of the previous year? So he says, because the last Tishrei at the beginning of the year, Tavshin Pei 5785, Hashem gave us everything we needed on credit. Throughout the year, by our Torah mitzvahs, we need to pay back what we owe Hashem for giving us a ksiv v'chsima tova last year. Therefore, when the month of El comes at the end of the year, so a person takes stock, makes an accounting, and he indicates his wish, and not only indicates his wish, but also he begins to pay back the debt that he owes. How does he do so? How does he show his will? How does he begin to pay back his debt? Through the tshuva that he does in the month of El. Because Hashem Yisbarach Roya Sheroitzim Mishalm Zachoyv. This the Baal Shem Tov continues. When Hashem sees that we want to and we do pay back the what we owe him, so then whatever might have been left not completely paid back, he forgives. This is accomplished, the Baal Shem Tov says, in the days of Slichus, that he will forgive us the rest by seeing what we have been doing in the month of Elul to improve and to pay back what we owe for the Ksiv V'Chsim Toiva. V'zohi, not only is it, we said Elul has two aspects. It's an accounting for the previous year. So now we understand why it's an accounting and taking stock of the previous year, because we've got to figure out what we owe Hashem and how to pay it back and so on. But we said also that the month of Elul is a preparation for the coming year, because this also works towards Hashem continuing to extend us credit the next year. This is also the preparation, what we're doing in the month of Elul, for Hashem giving us again on credit in the coming year. Since through the person's avoid in the month of El, Hashem sees that he's trustworthy. He's gonna pay back what he owes. So then they also give him in the coming year, beginning from being written and being sealed for good. How can Hashem do so to sign us, to inscribe us for good and seals for good, even though we're at the beginning of the year, even before he started doing his avoid of the year? But we have in El demonstrated how trustworthy we are, so Hashem is willing to give us on credit again this upcoming year, this future year. The Rebbe continues in Ois Gimel. Since the month of El is a month of accounting for the previous year, and it's a month of preparation for the upcoming year, all the specifics of this, meaning the specifics of what we did the previous year, and the specifics of what we are supposed to be doing the next year. As we mentioned earlier, that in our avodah that we do in Elul is dependent, and it comes about everything that's drawn down from above. So therefore, that also also needs to be hinted in the name of the month. So it's not just in the name of the month we have on Lidodi Vododi Li, which indicates the general relationship of us with Hashem, but there are specific aspects of our service to Hashem that we did in the prior year and we have to complete for the prior year, and there's a specific service that we need to prepare for the coming year. So those specific detailed types of aspects of our avodah also needs to be hinted in the name of the month. Why is that so? Because the name of everything, the way it's called in Lashon Kodesh, that's what brings into being and gives vitality and makes exist the item that's called by this name. Like the teaching of Baal Shem Tov that the Alter Rebbe brings in Sharich V'Amunah, that the words of Asar Maamaris, that Hashem called every specific item by a specific name, that name, those letters in Lashon Kodesh, let's say the letters that make light, Aleph, Vav, Reish, that name gives the life and the existence and brings light into being. So therefore, the Rebbe expands this idea that anything and everything that exists, the name of that thing is its divine life and entity. So the name of the month of El gives energy not just to the general avoid of El, but also the specifics of the avoid of El, as we're soon going to explain what the specifics are. So even the specifics must somehow be found in the name of the month of El. So the Rebbe says in line 10, this is what's also explained in many places. The El, Nirmazim kol shloishes hakavim shebehem iklolos ha'avodah. It's hinted in the Rosh Tevis of El, all the 3 lines, that this is the general service of a person. Torah, Avodah, Gemilas Chasadim. A person's service has 3 lines, 3 pillars, like it says in Pirkei Avos. The Torah study, the service, which originally meant the service in the Beis Hamikdash, and now is the service of davening, and doing acts of kindness. All these 3 things are hinted in the Rosh Tevis of El, as the Rebbe speaks about in other places. For example, on Lidodi Vododi Li is not just about El in general, but it's about a love of a Yid and Hashem. That's davening. Davening is about engendering that connection with Hashem, especially the love of Hashem. V'ahavtas Hashem Elokecha. Gemilas Chasadim. There's a Rosh Tevis that says Ish L'Re'ehu. Umatonis L'Avyonim, a man to his fellow, and gifts to the poor, meaning doing acts of kindness, tzedakah. Torah is hinted in the fact that it's Ina Liyade V'samti Lach, that it's Rosh Tevis of El, that occurred to his hand, I will place for you the cities of refuge, because Torah is called a refuge from the Yetzer Hara, Divrei Torah Koltim. So therefore we find in the Rosh Tevis of El not just the general connection that I have with the Eibishter Niladoidi V'doidi Li, but also the specifics that I need to work on, both on the previous year in preparation for the coming year, which is Torah, Avodah, and Gemilas Chasadim. V'gam Inyan HaTshuva, also Tshuva is hinted in it. One of the ways how Tshuva is hinted is also by the same Rosh Tevis we did for Torah, because Ina La'adi V'samti Lach, the Arim Miklat, the cities of refuge. Tshuva is a place of refuge where we escape the Yetzer Hara. So the Rebbe also adds that Tshuva impacts and elevates the 3 lines of Torah, Avodah, and Gemilas Chasadim. So he says, line 14, Shal Yoda, through Tshuva, Nasim Kol Inyane Shloishes Akavim. Through it becomes all the matters of these 3 lines of Torah, Avodah, and Gemilas Chasadim, Ba'oifen Shem Toivim U'Meirim, in such a way that the Torah and the Avodah and Gemilas Chasadim are not just ordinary mitzvahs, but they are good and illuminated. What does that mean? So the Rebbe brings in the parentheses, K'mevur b'sei the Lashon Chazal Tshuva Ma'asim Tovim, like it's explained in the order of what the Chazal said, that the expression that the Chazal always use is Tshuva and good deeds. The question that's always asked in Chassidus is, why is the order first Tshuva, then good deeds? Tshuva seems to be something that's done if someone messed up. So first, there is plan A. First, you have to do Ma'asim Tovim. You have to do good deeds. Then, if it doesn't work out, something gets broken, so then you got to fix it. You got to repair it with Tshuva. So it should have said Ma'asim Tovim and Tshuva. Why does it say Tshuva Ma'asim Tovim? So the Rebbe explains, or the Alter Rebbe actually explains originally with the Torah, that the Tshuva that a person does, which is not only limited, as we know, Chassidus talks about Tshuva not being limited just to doing something wrong, but it's Tshuva is returning to Hashem, becoming close to Hashem, makes the Ma'asim, makes the actions, makes the mitzvahs that we do, that it should be Tovim. Shaidei, line 17, Shaidei Hakdamas HaTshuva, through prefacing, through having Tshuva at the beginning, first Tshuva, then Ma'asim. The actions, the mitzvahs that are done after the tshuva, they are good and luminous. We know that good has to do with being luminous, as it says, Vayar al kimas ha'or ki tov, that Hashem saw that the light was good. Light is associated with goodness. So the goodness of our mitzvahs, the light of our mitzvahs, is dependent on a result of our tshuva being done beforehand. So therefore, the same thing over here. You have an elul, the avodah of Torah, avodah, and Gemilas Chasadim. You also have the tshuva. The tshuva ensures that the Torah, avodah, and Gemilas Chasadim that I do in elul is in a ultimate way, in a luminous way, in a good way, and so on. So now the Rebbe takes these details again and now puts it in a new box, if you will, and a new idea. So he says further on line 19, though in details, or specifically, the avoid is divided into the three lines, like we said before. Toida avoid and that the person needs to deal with and elevate and so on. That's only concerning the manner in which the person expresses his service to Hashem, the manner in which he does the actions having to do with Hashem. But in the general approach, there are two approaches. Sur mera v'asei toiv. There's what says in the pasuk, turn away from bad and do good. And then the conclusion of the pasuk, the Rebbe says in the parentheses, Vaydei nasa achar ha'inyan debaka shalom b'rotfeu. It comes about afterwards, the idea of search out peace and pursue it, as the Maamar will explain what that is and how that builds on the first two. So the Rebbe is going to speak about the Sur Merav Asei Toiv in a lofty level, as he's soon going to explain about. He's not talking about real bad. He's talking about a very subtle type of bad that one needs to turn away from. So he says in line 25, last paragraph on the page, the idea behind this is, as it's known, the teaching of the Baal Shem Tov, maybe that my father-in-law, the leader of our generation, the Frierdiker Rebbe, brings the Maamar Dibra Maskal Ani לדודי, in the Maamar entitled Ani לדודי, Shakavona Bara V'Toivi Bedakis. When it's talking about Sur Mera, we're talking about a subtle bad, and also the good is subtle as well. But the main focus is here on the bad. Hainu, what does it mean a subtle type of bad? Either something is bad or it's not bad. What's it mean a subtle bad? Hainu shezeu rak and shezeu ra rak berach hatoiv. We are calling it bad only comparable to the good. Is it called bad? It's not real bad with a capital B, but it's actually a bad that's comparatively bad. In all permitted items, that concerning permitted items, that's the main service of a person. The main things that a person is involved in for the majority of the day are things that are permitted, not obligatory and not prohibited things. So in all these permitted items, yesh guf v'nefesh. There's the body, the physicality, the externality, and there's the soul, the godly spark that's in it, the life force, the vitality from Hashem that's in it. Like it's explained at length in many places, that the idea of a body and a soul is to be found in every item in this world. Now, when you compare the body to the soul, so the comparing the body to the soul, it's like in the general comparison between the material, physical things in comparison to the spiritual and the vitality of the energy and the life force of the spiritual that manifests and embeds itself in the physical. So the physical in comparison to the spiritual, nikra b'shem ra, is called bad. So again, it's not terrible. It's kosher food. It's a kosher activity. It's a permitted activity. But when you contrast that, you make a juxtaposition between the physical food versus the godly energy that's in the food. So the physical food, the material food itself, is bad in comparison to that. So now, based on that, the Baal Shem Tov explains what is the idea of Sur Mera in a subtle way. It's not talking about Sur Mera, don't do Avedas. We're not talking about that here. We're talking about a more subtle form of Sur Mera. So he says in line 8, V'zoi ha'avoida de Sur Mera. That's the avoid of turning away from bad. that one should not want and desire the delight of the physicality of whatever item he is engaged in. Because in comparison to the spiritual aspect of it, in comparison to the godly life force that's in it, the material delight, the material item is the bad. So sur merah means turn away from that. Don't focus on the material enjoyment of that physical item. But sur merah is not something in a vacuum. It continues with vasei toiv. So he says in line 10, following this, there has to be the idea of doing good. You need to, what's it mean to doing good? Again, in a subtle form of goodness, that instead of the person's delight being from the material food, from the material thing, whatever material item they are engaging with, but rather, we're not telling you, don't enjoy it. You can enjoy it, but enjoy the spiritual part. You're enjoying the connection you're having with Hashem. You're enjoying the vitality and the energy that's giving you in connecting closer to Hashem. The spirituality and the vitality of the thing, that is what he needs to focus on to enjoy. That is the first part of this pasuk, sur merah vasei toiv. We said before in the parentheses, following this type of focus, not to focus on the physical pleasure, focus on the spiritual pleasure of it, then there is Bakei Sholem v'Rodfei. So first he's going to explain Bakei Sholem. By first prefacing the sur merah and the asei toiv, that you're not focused on the physical enjoyment, you're focused on the enjoyment of the spirituality and the life force and the divine energy. So then, it comes afterwards the service of searching out peace. What does it mean he's searching peace? He's making peace between the bad, the subtle bad that we're talking about over here, and the good. Meaning, he makes peace between the material and the spiritual. Beginning from making peace between the body and the soul. Like it's known, the teaching of the Baal Shem Tov on the pasuk, that when you see the donkey of your enemy collapsing under its load, you should lift it up. That which is the chamoir, when one examines the coarseness and materialism of the body, which is hinted in the word chamoir, donkey in Hebrew. Chamoir is related to chaimer, materialism. So when he looks at the materialism of his body, the avoid is to see that's your enemy. What's it mean it's your enemy? Again, just like we said before about bad, it's not awful bad, but it's bedakas al kaponim, at least in a subtle way. The body is an enemy, kanisker la'el b'pirish sur merah, like we mentioned before in the explanation of turning away from bad, that the body is called bad in comparison to the soul, in comparison to spirituality. How come are they not essentially bad? Why are they only considered bad in comparison to the soul? Because the negam haguf hagash mishal ish yisrael minyan kedusha. Also, the body and the physicality of a Jewish person are holy matters, to such a degree, not just the body, but his material possessions. Hashem is careful about. V'achah Torah chasa al mamoinam shal Yisrael. We know that the Torah had pity on Jewish money. Let's first introduce the story, and then we'll see further how the Rebbe analyzes the story. It says about a house that the kohen has to come and examine to see if it has tzaras, if it has one of these spiritual afflictions of the discoloring and so on. If the kohen pronounces the house as being tamei, so then all the items that are in the house at the time that the kohen pronounces the house being tamei, they become tamei as well. They become declared impure. It doesn't make a difference if they were there prior to the kohen's coming, but only once the kohen has declared the house tamei, so then everything in the house becomes impure. So Hashem told the Yidden that before the kohen comes to check to see if the house is tamei or not, take everything out of the house. How come? Because Hashem took pity on the valuables, the possessions of a Yid. And the Chazal go on further and said, what types of possessions did he have to take pity about? Other things, most items that are susceptible to becoming tamei, those very items have ways of being purified, either through a mikveh or other ways. The only type of item in a household that would become irreparably tamei would be earthenware. And earthenware is something that generally, in those days, was not of great value. We're not talking about expensive vases. We're talking about earthenware that are like pennies. Still in all, Hashem said, was worried about that earthenware that would not be able to become tahor if the kohen would declare the home tamei, and therefore everything in it would be tamei. So Hashem said, clear out the house because I care and I take pity on Jewish possessions. So we see this idea how that the body and the physicality of a Yid are holy. It's just the point that he's going to conclude. In comparison to the soul, it's still sur merah, it's still bad in comparison to the soul. So now the Rebbe is going to elaborate on what I just now said about this Hashem taking pity on the material possessions of a Yid. So the Rebbe says in line 24, this is said about Hashem taking pity on a Jew's possession is not just about a tzaddik's possessions, but every single Yid. Regardless of what their spiritual state is. Even someone that finds himself in a very low level. One of the reasons why tzaras would come to the houses was as a punishment. It says that initially it would come to the house, and then it would come to the clothing, and if he still didn't do tshuva, it would come on their body. There's other reasons as well, but often it would come for inappropriate activities. So in other words, Hashem cares even for a possession of someone who has, for his wrongdoing, been the reason why his house might be proclaimed tamei. Line 26, even concerning the money of someone in a lower level, Hashem had pity on. Therefore, in Torah there is an actual directive that you have to clear out the house before the kohen comes to see the house, because you do not want to cause that even this person who may not be the greatest of people, he should not have a loss of money. What's the reason that the Torah was so compassionate about a Jew's possessions? Since we're speaking here about a Jewish person, even when it comes to his valuables, his possessions, his valuables, even further from the soul than his body. Male of the body is connected to the soul. So some of the holiness of the soul maybe rubs off on the body. But his possessions, we're saying no. Still in all, he says in line 4, Chosa Torah, Chosadike is specifically compassion, pity, Shwina Rachim, it's the idea of mercy and compassion. Yet, and this is the point that he's trying to conclude, that even though it is in a way of it's holy, and so on. Still in all, we need to begin with the way of the beginning of our service, turn away from bad. One should not desire and want the physical pleasure in the matter. To such a degree that it turns away from it. This is also the reason that there's no need in breaking the physicality of the body through fasts and other afflictions, like the continuation of the Baal Shem Tov's teaching on when you find the donkey of your enemy collapsing under its load, you're supposed to assist it. In other words, you're not supposed to fast and break it and afflict it. Rather, what does it have to be, the Sur Merah? How is this balance done? Sur Merah does not mean afflict yourself, doesn't mean torture yourself, does not mean fast. It's in such a way that he has all the physicality. His delight, his pleasure, is involved and focused on the spiritual component of the physical. Don't get rid of the physical. Keep the physical, be healthy, don't fast, don't afflict yourself, but focus on the spiritual component. That's the idea of doing good, like we mentioned before. Until it comes the level, like we said before, after you have the Sur Merah, you have the Asay Toiv, then has to be the next step. Bakish Shalom, search out peace. And we started saying searching out peace means now, once you were turning away from the pleasure in the physical, you need to make peace between the physical and the spiritual. Hainum, this means the avoid in such a way, like it says over there in that pasuk, when you see the donkey of your enemy collapsing, help it out. See him towards Baal Shem Tov, like the conclusion of the teaching of Baal Shem Tov that mentioned before. Through the body and the soul together, and Shanasa Shalom b'neim, that it becomes peace between them. And not only peace, pirish the Shalom Meloshin Shlemis, until the meaning of Shalom from the word perfection and completion, that he reaches this completion in such a way because of the joining of the both of them. Then we said not just Bakish Shalom, but also Radfehu. That's another part of the pasuk. So he says in line 19, from this comes afterwards that I avoided. That's not just in the way that you're searching out peace, but also in a way of pursuing it. What's the idea of pursuit? It's running and rushing. What does running and rushing indicate? When I run after something, when I'm rushing, what causes that? What's the motivation behind that? Why does someone run? Because whatever he's running after is in the most powerful will and desire. That rotzen is from the word rushing and running. So the word rotzen and merutza go together. The will is in its most powerful expressed when the person is running towards something. Until the very rushing of the soul itself, like it's explained in many places in Chassidus about the advantage of will over the other inner powers like intellect and emotions and so on, that they are not so closely related to the soul like Rotzen is. So that is the ultimate level, the Rotfeu. We are going there with the entire desire to unite and to join the physical and the spiritual. So up till now, we spoke about the concept of the Avodah of Elul in general, even though he brought in a little bit more about the days of the Slichas. In the second half of the Maamar, which we will learn next week, he will connect this more with the idea of Chayel and with the idea of Parshas Kisavai, not this week's Parsha, which is Kiseitze, which has to do with next week.